recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Knight, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am truly blessed to represent a district in Southern California that is the home of so many historic feats. Today I'd like to tell you about one of those feats that turns 50 years old today. On October 3rd, 1967 is a date I'll never forget, but it's probably a date I'll never remember either since I was 9 months old. On that date, a B-52 flew down the runway of Edwards Air Force Base with a small white airplane tucked underneath her wing. A major who had thousands of hours in different platforms was the pilot of that airplane, who had been on several different programs and had been a test pilot for many, many years and a graduate of the United States Air Force Test Pilot School, was the pilot of that small white aircraft. The plan was simple on paper. It was to accelerate to 100,000 feet and achieve a Mach of 6.50. As the pilots at Edwards Air Force Base will always tell you, it is a profession that they go about. And they do this in a very, well, professional manner. The terms were 100,000 feet and 6.50. The ending was 102,000 feet, 100, and 6.72, a new airspeed record. Now, the thing that was interesting about this was the airspeed record had been set on November 18, 1966 by the same pilot and broken just 10 months later. And that issue, that flight, has now stood for 50 years. If that pilot was here today, he would say that's a travesty that that airspeed record has stood for 50 years. In fact, I was standing with him on the 30th anniversary, and he said just those same words. Why are we stuck where we were in the 60s? Why haven't we continued to push forward? Now, I believe he would. And I believe he would be right today. And I hope that I'm not standing here on the 60th anniversary talking about the same issue. Now, the great men of those era did some phenomenal things, and they pushed the limits. And they knew that the sky was no limit, that it was actually just a boundary that you needed to push forward. There were 12 pilots on the X-15 program, and I grew up with many of them or their kids. There was General Rushworth and Neil Armstrong, Bob White and Joe Walker, Bill Dana and Joe Engel, Scott Crossfield, McKay, Thompson, Peterson. Mike Adams lost his life in the X-15 program in November of 1967, the only one to lose his life in the X-15 program. And the pilot of the October 3rd, 1967 flight was my father, Pete Knight. He flew the aircraft 16 times, setting the airspeed record several times and breaking it, and then achieving 4,520 miles an hour on October 3rd, 1967, which still stands today. And I think the lesson is that we've got to keep pushing. And technology is not out there for no one. It's out there for us to grab and for us to continue to achieve. Those records are made to be broken, and we must continue to push in aerospace and in every endeavor. That's what America does, and that's what we do for all of mankind. I think that this record was a great achievement, and I can tell you one quick story. I knew of this record when I was a small kid because my father pulled that Mach meter out of the X-15 after he set the record. And that Mach meter sat on our television for every year of my life until he was on his deathbed, and he said, I want that Mach meter to go to the Smithsonian, which is exactly where we sent it. But this was something that was an achievement by many men, many engineers, many pilots, and many chase pilots. But it is something that is now 50 years old, and we need to continue to push. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.